I did not understand how specifically solar worked. So let's just run through the bare bones basics, keeping in mind that a lot of the particulars very much depend on the state you live in and your energy company's policies. So I'll speak to what I'm doing here. You'll have to do a little bit more research in your area. But the first thing to think about, what do you have when you turn on the light, right? What happens? Well, energy, electricity is pulled from the grid, which we hear about, we don't really think about, and it's what powers all of our homes, right? And so when you want to get off the grid, you might think, okay, well, let's just get some solar power. Then the sun is hitting the panels are generating electricity. That electricity is going directly into my toaster, right? Well, it turns out that's not actually how it works. Your house is, of course, connected to the grid because that's how it's drawing energy from the grid. And when you put solar on the roof of your home, what's actually happening, unless you have a battery, which I'll get into that, but unless you have a battery, what happens is the solar energy generated is actually just going to the grid. And you're sort of netting out what you use versus what you produce. And so if you have a super old meter, you can actually literally see it spin backwards as you produce more than you consume. I do not have one, so I actually have a little graphic on my meter that's connected to my house. Almost in all cases, you'll see an arrow pointing in a particular direction, let's say the left. If it's pointing to the left, it's basically saying, hey, your house is using more energy than it's producing. And if you don't have solar, that's always going to be the case. You're not producing anything. But in my case, with 24 panels on the top of my house and about an 8.5 kilowatt hour system, I sometimes see it spin the other way. And it's actually very cool and very exciting to see that. And what that means is I am on the net producing more than I'm consuming. And the way that works at a high level is you're not off the grid. So if the grid goes down, if there's a power outage, blackout, brownout, the solar doesn't do anything for you. Sorry to say, this is something that I think a lot of people do not understand, and I did not at the beginning of my personal solar energy journey. I thought, okay, well, cool. I'll just, it'll trickle in and I'll just use whatever I can use. And how naive I was. But there's nothing wrong with being naive as long as you are learning along the way, which is what I did, and hopefully what we are doing right now. So let's just say it's January right now. It's not a great month for solar. Obviously, the days are shorter. The sun is lower. Nevertheless, I will still be generating. So let's just say I generate 1,000 kilowatt hours worth of electricity and I use 1,000. Well, then the only thing I have to pay that month is my connection fee to the grid. And that's, in my case, with my energy company, it's either $10 or $15 a month. And it's sort of them just saying, hey, this is basically an administrative fee for the ability to be connected to the grid. Kind of annoying because I'd love to see a $0 bill, but it'll never be the case for me. The most I would ever pay, the least would be $120 a year, right? $10 a month times 12 months. So that would be the case if I just generated exactly what I consumed. Let's say I generate 500 and use 1,000. Well, now in the net, I've used 500, right? So I'm billed for that amount based on the time of day that I use it. Most energy companies around the country are going to contextually bill you a different price per kilowatt hour based on the time that you use it because it is a grid, it's a network, right? So if a lot of people are using it, it's more expensive, AKA from like 6 to 9 p.m., quite expensive hours. Those are usually called peak hours or super on peak or on peak hours. And then you have things like your super off peak hours, like 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. That's typically a super off peak hour where you're not really expecting to be competing with many people for energy usage. Everyone's asleep. No one's really doing too much, right? Now let's take the most interesting case. This would be where you are producing way more energy than you are consuming. I've had months where I've produced about 2,000 kilowatt hours and I've only used 600. So what happens? Does good old San Diego Gas and Electric cut old Plant Daddy a check? No, they do not. Unfortunately, they do not. But they do something that's close. And what they do is something called net metering. So they'll say, hey, you generated 2,000 kilowatt hours this month. You only used 500. So you actually gave us 1,500 kilowatt hours. Thank you. Here's what we'll do for you. We will give you 1,500 kilowatt hours times a price per kilowatt hour, whatever that price might be. It might be 10 cents, 20 cents, 5 cents. And then that dollar amount will accrue as a negative balance in your account that you can sort of spend against. Think of it almost as like a gift card that if you actually go a little over 1 month, you're not pulling from zero. You don't actually owe them. You're actually pulling from your bank of sort of saved up energy that you've generated. So that's what net energy metering is. Not every state has it. And even the ones who do, it doesn't work the exact same way everywhere. But that's the real reason to get solar, at least in my opinion, is you can delete your energy bill. Eventually, on a payback period basis, you start to go positive, right? Because you're outright some amount of cost for your solar panels. In my particular case, I believe it was somewhere around $17,000. Now, I put a lot of panels on my house, and I'm in a more expensive sort of area for that service, and it was also an expensive time to get that service. So you really want to do the quotes, do the math. But basically what you're doing is you're saying, how much am I out of pocket for? And how much will I be saving on a monthly basis? Thus, how many months will it take before I break even? And the first month after you break even, of course, you are net saving money over the long term. And you also have a bit more freedom and a bit more leeway, in my opinion at least, to install systems, use energy in ways in your house that benefits you and your family and perhaps even helps you become more sustainable. And the reason I say that is because let's just say it gets to be December 2024 as we listen to this episode, and I'm over here generating electricity. And by the end of the year, the overall generation that I've done is probably, I don't know, call it 2,000 kilowatt hours in the green, as in I've produced on the net 2,000 more than I consumed over the whole year. Well, what happens at the end of the year? Then it wipes to zero. That's called your true up month. You can't really carry it over in my case. So the incentive here is to use pretty much what you produce. So, in my case, I generate a ton in the summer and I'm not using a lot of energy. As I get towards the fall, winter, it gets a little colder. I don't really have an insulated home. It's like 100 years old almost. I think this year it'll be 100 years old. So I'll throw the heater on and I'll start eating into that balance. By the end of December, there's no real point for me to hold any sort of negative balance because I'm not getting anything for it at that point in time. Now, I wish that changed. I really do. I really wish that you could get some sort of credit or it could accrue, because then at a societal level, what we'd see is we would see way more people putting solar on their homes and a net benefit would accrue to the grid as a whole. And probably society itself would be better off. So I hope those policies change. But the only way you sort of get out of this system that I've just described, off the grid while in the grid, so to speak, would be to explore whole home batteries. Now, it's not something I've done, and it's not something that I have plans to do right now. Reason being, I'm hoping battery technology gets a lot better, and I'm hoping it gets a lot more affordable. But the only way you can really get off the grid while still being in a suburban home connected to the grid is a battery system. And so the way that would work is the solar you generate is charging your batteries up first, then the surplus would go to the grid. And then what would happen is during the most peak hours of the day, when you would be pulling from the grid and accruing sort of that per kilowatt hour price, you'll actually be pulling from your battery. And of course, that's true stored solar energy. So then if the grid was to go down and your batteries were charged, voila, you have at least some period of time where you can power your home. Now, it's going to be not very long, maybe 48 hours or something like that. But every day you would start generating more. So you'd fill up more and then you sort of draw it down, fill it up, draw it down. But it's pretty tough to make that work right now from a technological perspective. So that would be a primer on solar. Like I said, I've got 24 solar panels on my house and I have not paid a significant electricity bill in 2 years. And it's been great. So I'm maybe 3 more years until I'm break even on it. And then I'll be sort of pure profit, so to speak, or producing in a way where my electricity bill just really doesn't matter very much. But that does not mean there aren't other ways to use energy systems on your property that are beneficial to you. So one I think is extremely underrated would be electric heat pumps, or mini splits as they're called. So what these can do, these are basically room dependent air conditioning units that I have one in my office right now. I have one in my bedroom. I have one in my kitchen. And so if I'm not in my kitchen, let's say I'm in the office all day today, why would I have a whole house air conditioner blowing through every vent in the home? It's inefficient, right? So I have a mini split, which has an outdoor system that's drawing the air in and sort of pumping it through. And then I have these mini splits that are attached to the top of a wall in a home, in a particular room. And they can heat, they can cool, they can fan, they can dehumidify, etc. And because they're way more efficient and only in a specific room, you're drawing way less energy. And heating and cooling is one of the most energy intensive systems in the standard American home. So by doing this, you're getting more efficient with your energy production with the solar on top, maybe a battery if that's something that you're into. And then you're deleting a ton of energy usage from the most intensive historical system that most Americans use. So to me, those are the biggest two areas to focus on.
Watch the full episode right here and subscribe for more new episodes every single week.